December 23rd, 2015. In Ukraine, the snow was falling, the holidays were near, and the lights went out.
Not from a storm, not from a blown transformer, but because of a coordinated cyber attack that plunged hundreds of thousands into darkness.
This is True Cyber Crimes, where we dissect real world hacks, digital disasters, and breaches that send CTOs up all night.
I'm Nick Santilli.
And I'm Chris Kuselis. Today, we unravel the story of Sandworm, the Russian hacking group that pulled off the first ever confirmed blackout caused by hackers, and why it was just the beginning.
Ukraine's power grid was already under stress. Old Soviet era equipment, manual processes, and in 2014, Russia had annexed Crimea. Tensions were boiling.
Ukraine's utilities weren't exactly Fort Knox. Many still relied on remote desktop tools for managing control systems. Convenient, but rather risky.
And let's be honest, I think a lot of systems are probably a little shakier than we'd like to admit. But here's the twist to the situation: those remote tools weren't just for IT admins; they connected directly into operational technology, or OT, controlling the actual switches.
Which aren't really best practices, which is like having a flip off the lights button on your home computer and letting everyone on the internet try your password. So just a little sidebar here, OT versus IT. And we've talked about this before, but the information technology, office systems, email, HR software, corporate files, OT is really that operational technology, systems that are controlling physical processes, electricity, water, manufacturing. Think of old facilities in manufacturing, because that's what I think of when I think of OT. And breaching OT can cause real world damage, not just data loss.
Yeah, and I kind of think of it as, for a while we heard the term IoT a lot, the Internet of Things, right? And that was a way to jerry rig old analog type things in our homes to suddenly be connected and able to program them and things like that. So OT systems are the same, right? It's turning valves on, it's turning valves off with those computer controls. So yeah.
And it's not necessarily that garage door opener or that refrigerator. It's that dam or that power converting station or some pretty important things.
Stakes are a little bit bigger.
Yeah.
So somewhere in late 2015, Sandworm, who was an elite Russian state-sponsored group, slipped in.
They'd been in Ukraine networks for months, watching, mapping, learning the operators' routines.
And bonus points for any listeners who know what that term is. Do you remember that term, Chris?
I don't believe so.
So attackers like to call it living off the land.
I've heard you say that before. Yeah.
Sitting in those systems of just waiting.
Yeah.
The attack started with phishing emails, not surprising, that went and targeted power company employees, and they were disguised as routine system updates.
And those emails, they carried Black Energy 3 malware, a toolkit Sandworm had refined for years.
Once installed, Black Energy acted like a Swiss Army knife, logging keystrokes, stealing credentials, and opening back doors for the attackers.
Over time, Sandworm pivoted deeply, eventually accessing SCADA systems that controlled the grid, the power grid.
On December 23rd, where our story began, right before Christmas, they launched the kill sequence. So how did they do that? Their initial access was spear phishing. So we talked about phishing. Spear phishing is incredibly targeted. They know exactly who they're sending this to. They know their background. They know how long they've been in their position. They know their family members, things like this, where they can really create a very targeted message. So they sent these spear phishing with malicious office macros attached to the message. Then they used persistence, remote access Trojans for long-term control once they were in, so that they could continually get back in and keep that persistent presence. Then they went for privileged escalation, capturing admin credentials via the key logging. So, great, we know who we were working as. Let's increase our ability and our privileges through knowledge of the systems that we're attacking. And in their impact, they sent remote commands to actually open breakers in these power plants, literally cutting cutting the power.
Yeah. And they didn't stop there. They deployed kill disk, wiping hard drives to really slow down that recovery process.
It's kind of like burglarizing a house and then setting it on fire. Like nothing left untouched. They even hit the phone systems for utility customer service centers, flooding them so no one could call in and report the outages. It's crazy.
It was military precision digital warfare executed on civilian infrastructure.
The blackout lasted several hours, affecting almost 250,000 people.
But the real damage was psychological proof that the hackers could turn off the lights in a modern country. Just think about that, where you're sitting and everything just goes dark. The local Joe isn't ready for that. Data centers, power stations, they are ready for something like that. But if it goes off in my house, everything goes dead.
Yeah, yeah. We like to think that, well, that can't happen here, but I'm not I'm not so certain.
Yeah.
But the scary part, this wasn't an isolated strike. A year later, in 2016, Sandworm used an even more advanced tool, Indestroyer, to hit Kiev again.
They've got some pretty cool names. I'll give them credit for that. So,
Right?
um, Ukraine became the testing ground for cyber weapons, and everyone else was watching. So, just a little known fact here: during forensic analysis, investigators found that the attackers also altered the firmware of serial to Ethernet devices, making it impossible to send commands to restore power remotely. Crews had to drive out in snowstorms to manually reset breakers.
Um, Around the time, I don't know if it was around the time Sandstorm occurred, or if it was some other reason, but I ended up reading, um, some light reading before sleep about the security recommendations for U.S. nuclear facilities, and it was fascinating to see kind of how they were approaching that. And this was just in the last 5 or 6 years that
Mhm.
I read this, and they actually talk about standard should be to completely air gap, like there should be no connected controls to any of these things. We hear about these people having to drive out in snowstorms to flip switches. That's exactly what the standards for U.S. nuclear security is
Thank
is
goodness.
intended to be.
Thank goodness.
Right now, whether they're following that, who
Yeah.
knows? But
It makes me feel better
um,
to think they're following it. So
yeah,
don't
yeah.
blow my image of that, please.
Hey, the more things change, the more they stay the same, right? Let's go back to having to, Homer Simpson in the plant hitting the button. But
Right.
yeah. Anyway, I digress. Sandstorm is linked to Russia's GRU, specifically Unit 74455.
There's the same group behind NetPetya in 2017, which caused over $10 billion in damages worldwide.
Yeah, not Petya. They've it's there's been a little bit of damage and a lot of news about all that happened. Their playbook was disruption, chaos, and strategic psychological pressure.
And they target critical infrastructure because it sends a really powerful message. We can touch your way of life and disrupt it. So how do you defend against these OT attacks? Well, you kind of touched on some there with the air gapping, but network segmentation. You got to keep the OT and the IT separate. Yes, it's convenient to be able to toggle back before systems, but that convenience leads to what we're seeing here. And then strict access control, limit remote access and require MFA. Boy, MFA, 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 all every podcast, everything, every breach.
Yep.
And incident response drills include OT in a tabletop exercise, not just the IT piece. Hey, what happens if the power gets shut down? What happens if somebody infiltrates our OT devices? And logging and monitoring, deploy intrusion detection for industrial protocols. I mean, that's a huge industry out there right now, and they're doing some great things. Look into it, deploy it.
Yeah. Yeah. The Ukraine blackout, this event changed the game. It showed all of us that cyber attacks can cause real damage in the physical world with physical consequences, which is, yeah, an eye opener.
It, it also shows that infrastructure often isn't ready for modern threats.
Yeah. So what's the takeaway for businesses and governments? Assume that your network will be breached. It's it's a term that I've gotten tired of saying, but it's not if, but when it happens. Limit the blast radius with segmentation, as Chris already mentioned. Test your recovery processes under realistic conditions. And I think a key note to that is um, testing under realistic conditions. It's very hard to self-test yourself in a realistic way, right? If you just go, we'll just kind of run ourselves through our own pen test, you need somebody, a third party, to come and do that for you. Somebody who's gonna, kind of take the gloves off and
Stress it.
go, here's what we can really do to you given your
Mhm.
current system. So I think that realistic conditions is an important differentiator there. And remember that human error, like clicking on a phishing link, can still bring everything down.
And whether you're running a power grid or a private business, if you're connected to the internet, you're part of that digital battlefield.
Absolutely. And in the digital world,
Every bite leaves a fingerprint. Thanks, Nick. This was
yes.
another fun episode for me. Can't wait to see what we have for next week.
Yeah, sounds good. Thanks, Chris.
See ya.